Jewish Shamanism, Soul Rectification, Shor Hakugilam, The Gates of Reincarnation, Chapter 5, Differences. Regarding the difference between reincarnation and Eboard, there are two kinds of reincarnation and two types of Eboard. And going to Wikipedia to gain a deeper explanation of Eboard, in Hebrew, it means pregnancy or impregnation or incubation. It's one of the transmigration forms of the soul and has similarities with Ibur Neshemot. Ibur is always good or positive, while Dibur is negative. Ibur is the most positive form of possession and the most complicated. It happens when a righteous soul decides to occupy a living person's body for a time and joins or spiritually impregnates the existing soul. Ibur is always temporary, and the living person may or may not know that it has taken place. Often the living person has graciously given consent to the Ibur. The reason for Eboard is always benevolent. The departed soul wishes to complete an important task, to fulfill a promise, or to perform a mitzvah, a religious duty, that can only be accomplished in the flesh. In Lurianic Kabbalah, Eboard occurs when an incomplete soul, which cannot achieve tikkun, is completed by the addition of the soul of a tzaddik or spiritual master. Luria believed this to be possible even whilst the possessor was still alive. There are some fictional representations of this. Richard Zemler, The Warsaw Anagrams, New York, The Overlook Press, 2011. An historical novel set in the Warsaw Ghetto and narrated by an Eboard. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, Zemler's novel deserves a place amongst the most important works of Holocaust literature. The first kind of reincarnation is a single nefesh entering the body of a person from the day he is born and enters the world. The second is that sometimes it is possible that two nefashos will reincarnate together, entering a body together, also at the time the person is born. This is called a double reincarnation, as mentioned in the previous discussion and in other places. These two nefashos reincarnate together and enter the world at the time of birth in a single body and do not separate until the day of death. The two are called one nefesh and become one nefesh, bearing the pain and suffering that comes to the body throughout its life, including the pain of death. A note: in the First Nation Native American tradition, the reality stated here is called being two-spirited. Often, the spirits were of different genders, and in their unity, an individual may display aspects of feminine and masculine characteristics. or to males to offer hypermasculinity, or to females to offer hyperfemininity without regard to the body they occupy. Continuing. However, Eboord does not occur at birth, as explained earlier. And there are two types of Eboord. The first is when it comes for the benefit of a righteous person, entering a person to complete something he is missing. Footnote 217, the righteous person. As will be explained in its place. The second is when, for the sake of the person, to assist him with Torah and mitzvot. So first, it is for the sake of the righteous person that he descends, uh, very likely into a righteous person in body, and is able to complete some mitzvot. Or it is for the sake of the person who is injured to become better. Now, some of you may be hearing a wind sound. On YouTube, there is a great discomfort with the sound of wind over a microphone. In Arabic, nafas, which is similar to nefesh, is called the wind, and it is through a wind that you gain your ebood, or the mixing of air together. So to give a bit of example, air, as you call it, or as we call it, is overwhelmingly made of nitrogen and oxygen, carbon dioxide, and other elements and particulate matter. Whirled around by a magnetic field, uh, which naturally moves outward and rotates. The wind sound is helpful to understand this particular chapter. It is coming from a fan. When it comes for his own sake, then it does not enter the person until he becomes 13 years of age and 1 day, when he is obligated in Torah and mitzvot. He is also able to rectify himself through Torah and mitzvot of the person, and therefore he does not enter before this time, only after he is obligated in mitzvot. Then it enters and spreads throughout the body, just as the person's nefesh itself does, and the two of them bear the suffering that comes to the body equally. It remains there until it completes the time established for it to rectify and complete what it requires. Then it leaves during his lifetime and returns to its place above in the Garden of Eden. We can extrapolate for those who are engaged in exorcism that before 13 years and 1 day for a boy, and before 12 years and 1 day for a girl, it is very likely you're dealing with a devil, an evil spirit, not a holy one. However, when it is for the sake of the person himself and not for itself, then it comes by choice and not by force. Therefore, it is not forced to bear the pain of this body at all. It does not feel the pain and suffering that comes to him. If he finds the person appropriate, he will remain with him. If not, he will leave from him, as it says, leave the tents of these evil people. Bamidbar 16:26. Footnote 218. This verse is from Parashat Korah, just in advance of God punishing those who rebelled against Moshe Rabbeinu. was a warning to those who did not want to suffer their fate to stand aside. Here it is being used to refer to the Eboord of a righteous soul after its post acts unfavorably. Chapter 5 Differences, Part 2 Multiple Souls. Now we will explain that with which we began. Footnote 219 in chapter 4. The verse says, punishes the sins of the father on the children for 3 or 4. Punishes the sins of the father on the children for 3 or 4. Shemos 25. Shemuth is the 13th weekly Torah portion in the annual Jewish cycle of Torah reading and the first in the book of Exodus. It constitutes Exodus 1:1 through 6:1. This is by Wikipedia. I use Chabad's daily reading, which includes the Chumash, Chumash, the writings or books of Moses, and it follows this reading throughout the year. Chabad.org. You can also find it at Sefaria, Sefaria.org. Search for texts and source sheets from Torah, Talmud, and Sefer's library. Jewish texts and source sheets about Shemos from Torah, Talmud, and other sources in Sefaria's library. Now we will explain that with which we began in chapter 4. The verse says, punishes the sins of the fathers on the children for 3 and 4. Shemos 25. 20 and 5. The explanation being that up to 3 old reincarnation, up to 3 old reincarnating nefashos can reincarnate together with a new nefesh in one body from birth, in a way that they are 4 souls altogether. This is the salt of punishes the sins of the fathers on the children for 3 and 4 generations, and the salt or Kabbalistic explanation of 3 times with a man, Job 33:29. Footnote 220, as mentioned in the previous chapter, 3 reincarnating nefashos are able to reincarnate within a person who is the new nefesh. However, more than this is not possible at one time. And earlier we learned, or I learned yesterday by reading the Chumash and Deuteronomy, going to my notes. So I keep a Google document of really anything I think about at any point, and I keep it by seasons. So I usually keep things there. However, I also email my main teacher in spirituality from time to time, often without a response. Um, just because that's the nature of things. I know he hears it. So this is Deuteronomy 12:23, and it says, however, be strong not to eat the blood, for the blood is the nefesh, And you shall not eat the nefesh with the flesh. You shouldn't eat it at all. So the blood, literally the blood, is where the nefesh resides, according to the books of Moses, specifically Deuteronomy. It may be one reason why certain religious groups refuse blood transfusions. Not that I'm recommending that. It would be better than to select from whom you were able to get a transfusion than to refuse it, I believe. However, it is possible for there to be less sense. It is possible for one nefesh to reincarnate alone in a single body, or a reincarnating nefesh with a single new nefesh in the same body, or two reincarnating nefeshos can come with the new one, or three reincarnating nefeshos can come alone, or three reincarnating nefeshos can come with one new one, but more than this amount cannot enter a single body as mentioned. Know that the nefeshos that reincarnate in a single body, as mentioned, only do so when they all latch on to the same root. The soul redeem the sold property of his brother. Vayikra 25:25. Footnote 221. This is the law of Yibum, but it is being used to describe souls of the same root. And even though the new reincarnation has not committed the sins of the other reincarnating souls, nevertheless, if it is from a level more internal, footnote 222, that is, on a spiritual higher level than the rest of them, for example, it is from the level of the tendons, footnote 223, in the spiritual structure of Adam Haidashon, and the limbs of Adam Haidashon, and they are from the levels of the flesh, which is spiritually lesser than the tendons. The new one needs to cleanse the blemish and filth that resulted from the earlier sins in order for life to flow to this root. If you have ever had a Turkish bath, so if you've gone your entire life a good person, healthy, uh, muscular, you are safely vaccinated, your blood is flowing clean, you rarely become ill, maybe a bit of pollen just to clear your palate and your sinuses out, something like that. Uh, you may think, and you're not incorrect, that you are doing very well. Well, you're doing well. But if you ever have a Turkish bath, you go in, you sit on the hot marble, under which is a fire blazing, and there's water everywhere, and wonderfully assembled as rich in water to be used this way. And then I'll call him a samsar, of the body, the manager of your body at that point, begins cleaning you. You have on a sarong while doing so, which is moved around. You're clean, and they use a particular type of thin loofah, which is a plant that is known to grow in Egypt. And they clean and they clean and they clean and they scrub. And by the end of it, and they also massage various points in the body and release, uh, let's say, wound up magnetic fields. And afterwards, you look when they splash the water and you see it doesn't matter if you're extremely fair skinned. You see all of this gray or brownish red or whatever color skin fall from you. And you often, for the first time understand that if you showered, if you've done everything you could possibly have done, you thought, to clean your skin, uh, you've likely never cleaned it until you've had this bath. So it's something that I recommend. It can be jarring. It is meant to be a way of freeing you from certain sins. And then you kind of sit down, let your skin come back to itself, or be this new skin ready for what it is now. And you can wash this filth away. In the same way, uh, the new nefesh, uh, which is of a more righteous background, will need to learn what the Turkish bath is for these souls that have come in. Now, I would honestly consider using a Turkish bath if you can find one, and learning how to remove the layer of skin. One thing is to use non-mercury inclusive whitening soap, which often you put it on your skin and it dissolves. You please don't ever swallow the stuff. They have some herbs where you can do that. If you just clean your skin, you cannot become lighter if you don't use the mercury stuff. You cannot become lighter than your subdermal pigment. And you'll find out that your actual coloring is very different than you thought. My family practices looking like the place where you live. So we live in Southern California, and the Native Americans here and the Italians and others tan and have either a dark brown or dark red or kind of a darkened tan look. Let's say, to not use the same word, an eggshell that has been wet. All those, this is what's normal. I'm intending to move north, so I've been removing not only some of this dead skin, but also some of the excess pigment, so I can more look a bit closer to the people there. And this is something that can be comforting on the eyes of people, not because you believe it's true that another group who has lighter skin is better. It's just that you're trying to reach your true subdermal pigment. And by doing so, you know that you've cleared your skin. And maybe in that process, you can think about also clearing these nefashos that may have joined you. On the level of Eboard, it is also possible to become an Eboard and a person in this way. Up to 3 nefashos can reincarnate and come to help the nefesh, this person itself. With him, they are 4, but there cannot be more than this, though less than this is possible. Those which come besought an actual reincarnation, however, all come for their own needs, to rectify what they distorted, or to complete some mitzvah that they are missing. So I can hear someone already saying, or I can imagine someone already saying, how do I know what they need? Then I would recommend returning to, and this is a Jewish approach, so to be clear, that we're going back to the Torah and to the works of Maimonides, Moses Ibn Maimon of Egypt, the doctor and consultant of Salahuddin Saladin. We're looking at the great Rashi, a French scholar from about 900 years ago. And we're taking what they've said that we should do, and all of these rabbis and great scholars too, and we're applying it to this knowledge. And so read the Torah, read the mitzvos, and you understand what it is. You say the Isaiah 26:9 prayer. You say the Shema. And in doing all of these things, like someone, like a doctor telling you, well, walk 15 minutes a day at a rigorous pace, eat enough oily foods, balance it out with some dry foods as well. Make sure to have water and to expel it, and take this vitamin and this uh, pill. And in doing so, you'll find yourself healthy for an extremely long time. Well, if you're in China, it may be that you follow Confucius. You follow the Confucian notions of hierarchy and rank and who you are. You also understand a bit about what's the grade Lao Tzu uh, told us before he left China to head back, probably to Greece. And you include all of this. You look toward the Emperor of Japan and just understand what he is and his image. Do a number of things like this in honoring a Hilo. And for us, he's a Bodhisattva. You do all of those things, speaking for those who come from the lineage of Japan. You do those things, and you do them with correctness and volition. And I assume you gain what's gained there. There may be we're looking for only the good. There may be a balanced approach there. So really consider it. What we're saying here is for the Jewish community and for those who convert into it. I still believe the goal of conversion, it may be the goal of conversion on behalf of genetic Jewish individuals, is to bring down these souls, these nefashos, and others to be rectified and converts. And some will also support the convert and their approach to the Torah. But I believe that you are then intended to marry into a genetic Jewish family and to integrate yourself into it so we can continue to have diversity of genetics, but also maintain our genetic identity. I also consider Christians who follow the Torah in the Tanakh, the Torah, Nevi'im Chatuvim, which you call the Old Testament, plus, of course, Apocryphon, which are used. Those who follow that word and who attempt to download and listen to things like this, who realize that Jesus um, took off, as it were, from his body, and found some way to incarnate it again a few days later, and he's a descendant of David through his favorite son, Nathaniel, who was adopted by a descendant of David from the great King Solomon. Then understanding that, and this is what he followed, he would have known it, then I believe you are a convert, or at least someone who has initiated conversion. And I do not think Christopher, Robert Neal, do not think that you need to pursue conversion completely, though if you are inclined, don't do it, no. Go find a rabbi and tell him you've been denied a couple times already and see what he wants you to do at that point. Ask him if he is of the line of David, and then I would go with the line of David as a person who comes from the line of Joseph and Levi. Those which come to salt and actual reincarnation, however, all come for their own needs to rectify what they distorted or to complete some mitzvah that they are missing. Part 3, Order of Eboard. I will inform you of the matter of the order of Eboard in more breadth. Can you hear that song? And with an analogy, you will see for yourself that this person, now reincarnating in this body to rectify himself, has 10 other nefeshos higher than him in his roots. If this person merits it, then the 10th lowest nefesh will become an Eboard in him. It is the lowest of all the 10, but higher than him, and can therefore help and assist him to become rectified. A note on something I said earlier about the Emperor of Japan, uh, His Holiness Nohito. He is a cousin of Jewish people. He's a cousin of mine. I know from genetics. So that makes him a genetic Jew. And he goes to become emperor into a chamber very similar, and I've been in it, to the chamber in which Jesus of Nazareth went into when he left this world, and he emerges something different. So this goes on eventually, this book, to talk about how to bring down a specific evil or nefesh and other things, if I'm not mistaken, from my previous study on it on YouTube before reading it. So that is something that is done, and we expect that he has chosen a very holy person or personages to occupy himself. The holy prophets, the angels, the various spirits, these are all beings which we all believe in that are possible to enter you as your holy guardian angel, your Ayahuasca, the Holy Spirit. If he merits more than the ninth nefesh, if he merits more than the ninth nefesh, will be an Eboard in him. If more, the eighth nefesh will be an Eboard in him. Three nefeshos will be in him, the Eboard, and with him there will be four. It is not possible for more to be an Eboard in him. However, if he merits more than the seventh nefesh, if he merits more than the seventh nefesh, will be any polluted him, and the light of the tenth nefesh will be eliminated in this Eboard among the light of the three Eborim, higher than it. Footnote 224, since there can only be four nefeshos in the body at one time. In this manner, it continues until the three highest nefeshos of the 10 are at Eboard in him, the first, second, and third. These three will reveal their light for the one they are helping, while the light of the other seven is eliminated. Relative to the light of the three upper nefeshos, they are considered as if they do not exist, to the extent that it is impossible to be revealed besought Eboard. Only the three nefeshos alone, and with the nefesh of the person himself, they are four. More than this is not possible, as mentioned. This verse says, all these God does 3 times with the man. Footnote 225, Job 33:29 of Job. See the previous chapter for more explanation. All these God does 3 times with the man. The explanation is that in the first three reincarnations, the nefesh of a person reincarnates by itself without the partnership of another nefesh inside the body. However, if it is still not rectified after these 3 times, then it must come back a second set of 3 times, though it does not come alone, since it lacks the ability to rectify. Footnote 226. The first 3 times the soul is in the body, it can rectify itself. However, should it fail to do so, then it proves its inability to rectify itself, and thus requires any order to assist it to become rectified. Imagine you are trying to connect to your Zoom meeting, platform through which you can see a person and interact with them for purposes of meeting over distances, or at least not in person. And not only do you need to meet, but you need to go into a breakout conference. You can't show your background, so you need to find out how to get the right Zoom account to be able to change your background. And there are several other things that you need to do, including sharing your screen and several other things. Now, you're given a set of instructions, like the Torah and the mitzvot and all of those different things that on how to do this. And you read it, and you gloss over it. So you read it, you read it, you read it, and you get a few of the things done. And you're signed on, you're in the main screen. Of course, you're maybe practice the day before, maybe this is the first meeting, and you just couldn't figure it out. So you did everything you could to do it, and you just were unsuccessful at doing this. Well, you call then the IT guy, the IT specialist. Now, does he or she come to you these days? Sometimes, depending on who you are. Yeah, if you're the partner at a law firm or upper management, they may come by and sit with you and do it that way. But overwhelmingly these days, they take over your screen. They from somewhere else, from IT Central, they're able to capture your computer and move your mouse pad around and select and open files and do all types of things, and they can get you prepared for your meeting from somewhere else. So any board has come down and is able to move things around in your computer. So your computer in this case is your well, it can move your hardware around for certain things. I suppose other things that can make hardware move differently, but it also just moves your software, which is the Nefesh, Shodarach, or Neshama. These things they can make them function differently from somewhere else. This is an Eboard that has come in to help the Nefesh at this point, maybe Zoom, move around and do things that it couldn't do, or do things that you, the physical experiencer, couldn't do on your own. And we can judge you for it, or we can say, isn't it great that this e-board has come down to support you? Any board can come in the form of an mRNA vaccine. It can come in the form of a pill. And these are all ways that I believe this is an electromagnetic force. It seems to be weak nuclear force, uh, not strong nuclear force, like the Nefesh is, that comes and interacts with the spinning magnetic wheels of your spine and the nervous system as it affects through electrical pulses the various materials in your blood and your serum in the water in your body and otherwise. And so there's a cause here. There's something that works. There is theoretically a remote control that could be pushed to cause you to do different things. So this is the way that it works out. And because this happens, we're looking at the positive overwhelmingly. There are traditions that look at the deal book and which are not mentioned in this book. I found them elsewhere, at least I don't see them mentioned here, that could work otherwise for you. So all of this talk about angels and demons, if you prefer electromagnetic reality, if you prefer weak and strong nuclear force, if you prefer mRNA or pill uh, or or something like that, then consider those things as well as examples of how what we're talking about happens. Sometimes, often in Jewish tradition, we will speak at the very highest levels. Most people are used to law being given for the lowest common denominator. Most law is written for the person who not would otherwise be uncivilized if they didn't have it written for them at that level. Do not cross the street unless you're in a crosswalk and the walk signal is on. Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. There's some really scary people down there by the walk signal. Your car is directly across the street, and there's no traffic. Do you walk down to the crosswalk, push the button, walk over, and then walk back down to your car? Well, legally you do, but no. Uh, Unless you're the lowest common denominator, you should just walk across to your car. And the walk across your car scenario is what Judaism would tell you to do, even though the other routes, if it were 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're in New York, uh, then go down to the crosswalk and cross there and walk around. Uh, Walking through the street would be more dangerous. So if you can't decide if it'll be safer or not, do what you're told at the least common level and move on. Recently, there was a terrible incident of a police officer who tried to pull over a pregnant woman and her 3 children. And the lady, who is a black lady, African descendant individual, uh, her husband told her, never do that. You can, and this is law in most states, keep driving into a well-lit area, even if it's miles. Let them pursue you. You know they're not going to ram your car or anything. We see a lot of these car chases. And then pull over in a well-lit area, hopefully with their cameras, and then interact with this peace officer. So he pulled out, he got very angry with her for doing it, pulls out his gun and handcuffs the pregnant woman. And he, after terrifying her, writing her a citation, letting her go, he was fired. I believe his full intention was to pull her over and cause her to prostitute herself in a dark area with her children watching. His behavior afterwards made it seem very much like he would do that. And I don't care if you wear a badge or not, a man has certain desires, certain men do, with their power, their badge, and their gun. And don't allow him, in this case, to do that. And she didn't, even though she did get a great fright and embarrassment and other things that occurred. We pray her baby is safe. And this man was fired. So this is, again, the law would say as soon as the lights of a police car flash, even if you're on a dark road somewhere, pull over. Uh, though there are nuances to the law. If you are a woman alone with your children, or you are a category of persons who are often harassed by the police, it could still cause you some trouble, but find a well-lit area to do so where there are other people, if possible, and then pull over there. If it is impossible, turn on your audio recording device on your phone or other things that you may have, and at least record the information. In Russia, everyone has a dashboard camera that is watching out for all types of events and accidents constantly. So have a dashboard camera in the front and the back, watching everything, so that it will capture what might be occurring as well. These are things to do as I support law enforcement and police officers. I'm also aware that having a gun and a badge can be abusive, can promote one to abuse if given the opportunity to do so. It's not about bad apples or good apples. It's about individuals who are empowered, exceeding their power when given the opportunity to do so. And as we're all human, we all have to interact with each other. So again, most laws are for the lowest common denominator. In Judaism, I would argue most laws are for the very highest of us to accomplish. And therefore, there is tremendous uh, mercy offered if you can't meet perfection, including the rectification of the soul and soul transmigration or reincarnation. Okay, back to the Eboard. Therefore, it comes in partnership with a person. A righteous person becomes an Eboard in him to help and direct him for the good. Hence, it does not say 3 times, which would seem to refer to the first 3 times, but rather twice 3, to indicate a second time, which includes a second set of 3 reincarnations. Then he will have someone else as a partner with him, as mentioned. I learned to practice from the teacher. I learned quite a lot of this, what we would call it evolution, North African, Syrian mysticism, Kabbalah, Sufism, Ladino, and otherwise Ladino Moorish type of thinking, which is a lot of this is. And he told me, uh, think about every individual whom you had a close intimacy and that you forgot and know that those people may still harbor some negative feelings about you, or they may have accrued some. So, in your spirit, so for me, that's again, I believe the nefesh is the heart, and the heart pumps blood, so it pumps effectively itself around. And I believe the ruah is kind of the electric pulse that comes from, well, electric pulse that comes from the brain, or that could be the Shema or something higher. But in your brain, cause it to send electrical pulses which go beyond your body, and then imagine almost in a quantum sense, in a form of quantum entanglement, imagine that electric reality, and I'm going a bit more extensive into it, entering the body of one of those people whom you had a close intimacy. And let's say you're, well, I'll leave it at that because it can cause a little trouble to get into. And when you're there, pray. Pray for them. If you have a mantra or that's called to say the Shema, read Torah, if that's your thing. So do these things that are natural to you that you've been given and initiated into according to your tradition. And do that as long as you find it viable. And do it for each and every person you had a close intimacy with, until you're done. And I remember as I was going through this process, one individual actually sent me a message back, "Hey, what are you doing?" And I wrote back, "What are you talking about?" And we ended it there. But just this is you becoming an Eboord while living into another person. This should also let you know that people become viewable for others in very similar ways, where they'll gather together all their hatred and their rage, and they'll approach you with it and try to enter your space. This is often not as facilitated, except in, you know, well, except in other ways. But it can come in the form of social media, rumor spreading, and other methods that people may use against you. They, instead of using their power in government or in business for the betterment of the corporation or for the people, they'll use it to harm In these ways, they become dual evil spirits for you that you have to remember to fight off. So just this is another way to look at it. Away, all fetid spirit, away, all fetid spirit, away, all fetid spirit. That's what I would say. Into the hive until those come along who are ready to correct you. End of this part.